In this episode, I'm going to compare the NC750X with the X-ADV and the Africa Twin. And finally, I'm going to tell you why I chose the NC750X over the other two at this point. If you follow my channel, you know that I purchased an NC750X 2020 model in December 2019. But it wasn't an easy choice and a fast decision. I read a lot of reviews and I knew I wanted a bike with a DCT gearbox and ABS brakes. So I narrowed down the choices to three bikes: the Honda NC750X, the X-ADV and the Africa Twin. I compared the technical specs, I talked with people, and I took all three bikes on a long test drive. And here's what I've come up with. First of all, we have to keep in mind that these three bikes are quite different. A few things in common is that they all have a DCT gearbox, they have ABS brakes, and they are categorized as adventure bikes according to Honda. You can find all the technical specifications online, so I'm going to concentrate on only a few that really made a difference for me. First, the NC750X and the X-ADV share the same engine, so therefore the power is the same, a little over 40 kilowatts, while the Africa Twin produces almost double, at 75 kilowatts. The NC and the X-ADV also have almost the same fuel capacity, due to the fact that they don't have a conventional fuel tank. The NC at 14 liters and the X-ADV at 13 liters. The Africa Twin, with a big conventional tank, is capable of carrying almost 25 liters. The consumption on the NC and X-ADV, it's also almost the same, as they share the same engine at 3.7 liters per 100 kilometers. I actually have come a lot lower than that, but it depends on your driving. The reported consumption of the Africa Twin is 4.8. The NC is the lightest of the three bikes at 220 kilos, and surprisingly, the X-ADV is exactly as heavy as the Africa Twin at 238 kilos. One thing that affects the handling a lot is wheel size. The NC have a street bike setup of 17-inch rear and 17-inch front, where the X-ADV has a typical scooter setup with only 15-inch rear, but in front they use a 17-inch rim to get better off-road handling. The Africa Twin, which is a real adventure bike, has an 18-inch rear rim and a 21-inch front rim. Looking at the prices, the NC is the most affordable one, and the X-ADV comes second, almost 3,000 euros more. But you have to keep in mind that it holds better components than the NC. For example, the upside-down front forks, double front brakes, and a more modern dashboard and design. And the Africa Twin compared here is the most advanced model, which is more or less ready to go on an adventure. It's the one with a tall windshield, electronic suspension, crash bars, and things like that. But the price, it's over double the price of the NC, at 18,500 euros. These are all facts printed on a sheet, but how does the bikes actually feel to ride? I had booked a test ride for all three bikes the same day at my local Honda dealer. And first out was the Africa Twin. It's a very spectacular bike and it looks huge compared to the other ones. Climbing up on the bike, I noticed that it doesn't just look huge, it actually is huge and it feels huge. It's also quite high and feels top heavy. At the same time, the riding position feels very comfortable. I took it out from the dealer straight into the traffic, where it felt wide and big and very clumsy. But when I got out on the highway, it felt very good. The riding position was comfortable, not wind drag, not turbulence. The windscreen is very big. In fact, at the lowest position, the windscreen was so high that I couldn't see over it. I had to look through it, which distorted the vision a bit. Entering some curvy roads, the ride was very relaxed and the riding position upright and comfortable. but it didn't wind through the curves as smoothly as I would have expected. This might be due to the big 21-inch front wheel, which gives some resistance when throwing it into a turn. And the acceleration out of the curve wasn't that smooth. Actually, it was quite jerky. It felt almost like it had too much power and it was distributed too suddenly. Now the Africa Twin has different power settings and riding settings, and it's possible that I didn't have the best alternative chosen. I took it out on a very short off-road trail and the suspension worked like a charm. But I didn't feel very comfortable with driving it off-road. It felt big, clumsy and very top-heavy. And with the price tag, I was scared all the time to drop it. I must point out that I'm not used to very big and heavy adventure bikes. I'm more comfortable with NC type bikes and the Transalp, for example. But I'm convinced that the Africa Twin would be the perfect bike to ride through the desert for a month, for example. Then the next one out was the X-ADV, and boy was it easy to climb onto compared to the Africa Twin. Just like a scooter, you just step into the bike, sit down and there you are. What surprised me was that the seat height was surprisingly high for a scooter model bike. And I had problems to flat-foot it due to the big and wide footrest on both sides of the bike. In traffic, it was just as easy as a scooter to ride. And on the highway, the windscreen and the shelter was very good. There wasn't wind draft on the feet, legs, upper body or helmet. And the windscreen wasn't too high either. Then, when I hit the curvy roads, I noticed there was something with the steering that I didn't like, or with the geometry of the bike. I felt like it was kind of drawing me into the turns. I had a feeling that I'm afraid to let go of the handlebars. I mean, you should not do it, of course, but with the NC I'm capable of letting go of the handlebars and steer with my body weight. But with the X-ADV, I had a feeling it's going to low side if I let go of the handlebars. And then onto the short off-road trail. The weight distribution is very good on the X-ADV. It has a low center of gravity and it didn't feel like it was going to tip over. The suspension also worked very good off-road, but again the big wide scooter-style footrests were in the way when riding off-road. It was very uncomfortable tapping down the feet now and then. I always hit the footrest, and again, when stopping, I wasn't able to flat-foot it. I had to have a very wide stance. But for a scooter-style bike, it's superb. Actually, it doesn't feel like a scooter at all. It's a motorbike, but only designed in a scooter style. Then back to the dealer to pick up the NC. First through the traffic. It's a quite small bike, so it's easy to handle. Similar to the X-ADV. Then out on the highway, and here you notice how small the windshield is. The wind pressure is huge on the helmet and on the upper body. I don't know why they sell it with such a small windscreen, but it's a thing that you have to upgrade. At higher speeds it doesn't feel very comfortable compared to the Africa Twin that was a joy to ride at higher speeds. Then, when I approached the curvy roads, I suddenly felt so at home on the bike. I threw it through the corners much faster than with the other bikes. It acts almost like a street bike in the corners. It accelerates very smoothly out of the corner due to high torque and low power. I had a big smile on my face inside my helmet and I didn't want to return it to the dealer. But unfortunately the time was up and I had to turn around. But first, a quick off-road test. At the trail, I right away noticed that the suspension is not as good as the Africa Twin, of course, but I couldn't notice any big difference to the X-ADV. Although the X-ADV should have better suspension. But again, it might be more noticeable when riding long off-road trails the whole day. Due to low center of gravity and being a very narrow bike, I was able to flat-foot it easily. This made the off-road riding much more comfortable and less scary. So the NC is technically not the best bike off-road, but in my hands it's the easiest bike to ride off-road. The bike with the best specs and the best components is not always the best bike for you. The best bike for you is the bike that you feel comfortable with, and it's the bike that you can take through difficult terrain without being scared to drop it. And also important, if you should drop it, you should be able to lift it up alone. So, what is my final verdict? With unlimited financial resources, I would buy all three of them. Technically and specification-wise, the Africa Twin is absolutely the best bike. It's also the most comfortable bike to ride. But price-wise, it's over double the price of the NC, and I don't think that it's over double better than the NC. Although I have to upgrade the NC for a couple of €1,000 to get it comfortable for me and to get it safe to ride off-road. So the Africa Twin was out of my price range, and it also felt too heavy and too big for me to handle. But if I would go on a several-day desert trip, the Africa Twin would be the bike I would want to have. For commuting and riding around town and to get good shelter for light rain and keep you dry, the X-ADV is the best of these three bikes. But it felt like a very high bike due to the fact that it has so wide footrests, so you cannot get your feet down right beside the bike. So for me at this point, the NC750X is the ideal bike. It is also the lightest and the most affordable one. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see all the upgrades and modifications I have made to the bike to make it more comfortable and suitable for adventures. I'm very interested in hearing which of these bikes you would choose and why, so please leave me a comment below and tell me. Ride safe, everybody!